Hey guys, here we are in central London. So look, when you are a dating coach, or at least when you create content about dating and relationships, particularly as a guy, there are two major objections that get thrown at you all the time. The first one, objection number one, is he has got a girlfriend, okay? And then the second one, objection number two, is he hasn't got a girlfriend. That's right, two contradictory bugbears that get thrown at people who make content in this space the whole damn time. What's the logic behind this? There is no logic. You may cry, because how can two contradictory things be a problem for haters? Well, let me explain it. The argument is that if somebody has got a girlfriend, or if they're married or in a long-term relationship, then they have got no right whatsoever to be talking about this stuff, to be talking about dating or the dating marketplace or the sexual marketplace, because how can they possibly know what they're talking about? Because they are out of the game, okay? They are no longer in the dating market, so how can they possibly have anything at all of value to say? If that's the case, they should hang up their boots and, talk about gardening or something like that instead. The second criticism is that guys will say, well, he hasn't got a girlfriend or he isn't married. And then the criticism is, well, he can't know that much about it if he hasn't even got a partner. If he hasn't even got somebody committed to him, then how can he proclaim himself to be any kind of expert in this field? Because surely if you knew a lot about it, you would have at least a girlfriend, if not a wife. So yeah, it's a hard cross that we have to bear, and we'll get the tiny violins out in a minute, but basically people are going to want to find a reason to hate regardless, okay? So if you're married, you've been married for 25 years, and you happen to have written a very popular series of books about sex, intergender dynamics, then you're going to get a bunch of people saying, well, how does he know anything about it? He's married. Alternatively, if you are free and single and you're out on the dating market, then people are going to say, well, he can't know that much about it because he hasn't even got a bird. Look at him. What does he know about it? Troy Francis? What a fake! What a fraud! So people are always going to have their criticisms, which is fine. It's a free country and everything. But why am I not married? Why am I not in a committed relationship? This is something that's come up a couple of times in comments and things recently from various people, and also just the more general sort of concern of like, well, isn't it time to settle down, which I covered in a different video. The fact of the matter is that, like most men of my age, I've been in a number of long-term relationships, a number of committed long-term relationships with really, really great women, really great girls for the most part. And I'm not at the moment, and that's kind of it really. And I'm not at the moment for various reasons. So I suppose you could say, well, why did none of those relationships end in marriage and the white picket fence and going and living in Kent? For a number of reasons. Maybe I've just not met the right woman yet. But to be more truthful about it, the main reason really, and there's been lots of peripheral reasons why, breakups happen and things. Because breakups generally, I think, don't happen for one reason. They tend to happen for a number of reasons. And so, there's been peripheral reasons why I've ended up breaking up with people. But I think for the most part, the truth of the matter is that I have always been somewhat resistant, well, not somewhat, very resistant against the idea of getting married and settling down. That's the truth of the matter. And I think for the women that I've dated, they have always, on some level, been aware of that. It's always been a concern for them. And then when it's actually sort of come to the crunch, they've realized, well, actually this dude, he's not the marrying kind, let's say. And so then the relationship has not continued. And that's, often been at my behest, sometimes it's been at their behest, sometimes it's been a bit of both, but whatever, those relationships haven't continued. And as I say, I think ultimately it comes down to me. Now, why am I like that? Is it because I've read all of Rollo Tomasi's books and I'm really angry and, I sort of spend all my time on internet forums arguing about the red pill and stuff? No, absolutely not. I mean, having come from, a background where, let's just say a family that was marked by divorce, so my parents divorced when I was young, and then, my dad remarried and then ended up getting divorced again further down the line. I never really had that sort of Disney-esque template in my mind of, oh, wouldn't it be just great to meet someone and be committed and, snuggle in front of the fire and whatever people do. I never really had that that end game in mind. And I think it's interesting because you go through your 20s and you go through your 20s and, I've talked about my history with dating and stuff elsewhere, but you go through your 20s, you start to get some traction in terms of dating and with the opposite sex, and then you're quite enjoying that, to be honest. You don't necessarily want to throw that, sounds crude to say it like that, throw that freedom away. You're kind of enjoying that momentum that you've got. So that was the case for most of my 20s, and then I got into my 30s, but then it starts to tip. Then the balance starts to tip, and you're like, well, actually, hang on a minute. Now I'm getting a bit older. Suddenly you're 30, you're 32, then you're 36, and you're not married, and you start to realise, well, but actually, hang on a minute. This is actually quite advantageous for me because, I'm doing okay. I'm happy. Happy in inverted commas. I mean, who is any of us happy? Is Troy Francis happy? Probably not. But you know what I mean. Like I'm okay. I'm having a decent time. I'm going out. I'm getting paid well. I'm going on vacations. I'm traveling the world. All this kind of stuff. And you start to realise, but actually around me, a lot of my friends and colleagues and people that I knew had started to get married and settle down. And you realise that actually, are they having an amazing time? Not really. I mean, not for the most part. I mean, some of them are, for sure. Some of them are. But, it's not like, I'm just looking at this guy's doing a day game approach over here, I think. And he's wearing like a white suit jacket. I wonder if he's ripped me off. But yeah, and you start to realise, well, hang on a minute, actually, my position is quite advantageous, and maybe I could keep this going. Maybe I don't have to do what everyone else is doing. But then, of course, then you throw emotions into the mix, and as I've said, I'm basically a romantic, to be honest. I mean, like a lot of guys are, I think, and you meet somebody, you spend time with them, you fall in love with them, and then it becomes tricky because then you think, well, okay, so I may have said previously, actually, I'm having a pretty good time, and I quite like my autonomy, and I quite like the single life, and things are pretty good, but this one girl, this woman, she's really special. We've really got something special between us, and then you start to think, well, okay, so maybe I was wrong. Maybe all that stuff I was saying, because at some point maybe you've got to throw the towel in, or at some point you've got to get run over for my art, guys. You think at some point, maybe this is the time, maybe this is my time, and she is the one. But there's always that conflict, right? There's always that conflict between, well, she's great, and we have this amazing, great thing together, and I love her, unimaginably. But I also know that as a guy, really, I can be traveling, I can be meeting different people, I can be having freedom, and I think ultimately for me, it's not even so much. I mean, what does commitment phobia really mean? It's a kind of a made-up word, isn't it? It's not that there's ever been any issue, for the most part, with with the women I've been in relationships with. I mean, I've loved, them very much, and so on. But it's more around the constraints of a relationship itself, and whoever the woman is really, unless she's incredibly understanding and incredibly liberal, I suppose, in terms of how she wants the thing to be arranged. There are inevitably going to be constraints on you and your behaviour and what you do. And for me, particularly when my life changed enormously, really, I went from being in a corporate job and so I was kind of unconventional. I always travelled a lot and did different things, but I went from being kind of in a corporate job to then being whatever I am now, and as whatever I am now expanded and grew, and travel becomes an element, and even if travel wasn't an element, it's sort of like you're not necessarily tied to a location, and all of these opportunities started to come in, and then I started to work with different people in the space and everything like that, and then you get to that problem of like, well, all right, so now things are looking doubly good, because not only am I living life on my own terms, but I'm also getting paid for it as well, and I'm also building something out of this, and that's really cool. That's really positive. So then you start to think, well, do I really want to, however special she may be, however amazing she is, whatever that great chemistry, that great bond that we have together is, do I really want to give up this and the future potential of my life as it now is, in order to get together with somebody? Now, look, you can meet a woman who's incredibly understanding and who absolutely gets it, and who doesn't mind that you're traveling for 6 months of the year, and all the rest of it. But in practice, in the end, the cracks are going to show. Ask me how I know, and I know not just through my own experience, but through the experience of others around me, people who do similar work to me, right? You can for a long time keep a fairly sort of casual kind of relationship going, where you're sort of traveling around. Maybe you're not seeing each other all the time, but you've got this thing, and it's you can keep that going for quite a long time. Actually, you can probably keep that going for a number of years. But in the end, she's going to want something a little bit more solid, I think. And maybe in the end, you're willing to do that. Maybe in the end, you're like, okay, you know what? I'm going to cash in my chips, and now is the time. But I think the point is that often guys will do that. Often guys will cash in their chips, and they will, accept the constraints of that relationship because they think that they have to, because they think, well, this is what everybody does, and in the end everybody has to do this, and what am I going to do when I'm old? Am I going to be lonely and need someone to take me to the loo and to the toilet and things, whatever, all that stuff, and they start thinking about those things. And then also as well, of course, the family and children thing comes into it as well, which is another whole area. But putting that to one side, they sort of think, well, I kind of have to do this because this is kind of what everyone does, and at some point I need to do the sensible thing, I need to do the right thing. But actually what we are seeing is that really is kind of a fallacy. The reality is that for dog barking his head off back there. It's a fallacy, because actually the truth is that for guys today, you don't have to settle down if you don't want to. You don't have to get married, because the truth is you can go through your 40s, your 30s, absolutely, your 40s, absolutely, your 50s. I know guys in their 50s who are dating, even into your 60s. You can go through sort of dating, sort of having similar, mini relationships, whatever you want to call it. You can have your group of friends, your tribe. You can make a living in whatever manner you choose, but maybe online, and that allows you to travel. Travel is still relatively cheap. Okay, cost of living crisis, fuel, blah, 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 but travel is still relatively cheap and quite easy. so there is now this new template for life that means that actually the old thinking, the old manner of thinking, which is like, well, 38 now, I suppose it's about time, this is what everyone does, okay, here we go. You don't have to do that. Now you can do it if you want. I mean, great, absolutely. If you want to do that, then fine. I mean, it's your life. Don't let some idiot on the internet tell you what to do. But you don't have to. You don't have to. And there are enormous benefits. I mean, there's going to be cost-benefit analysis across this whole thing, isn't there? And there are certainly benefits to being in a relationship, to having that stability, to having that sense of security, whatever, right? If it works. But on the other side, there are also huge benefits to not having those things. To being a free agent, to being free and single. And I suppose for me, that sort of equation has always kind of a little bit been in the background, and that's not to say that I haven't deeply loved, women that I've been with, and I've had some wonderful, amazing experiences, and it's incredibly painful. Actually, it can be incredibly painful because you are torn in two directions, because obviously that is a very strong impulse as well. The impulse to pair bond, the impulse to form something serious with somebody, to form something meaningful with somebody. But then, as I've said in another video, does intimacy ever really exist? Do you ever really know the other person anyway? That's another whole question. So, yeah, that's where I am at the moment. Will that change? Yeah, probably next week. Probably make a video about why men should get married in the West in 2022 or something next. I mean, I don't know. I mean, life is this. As the great Ronan Keating once sang, life is a roller coaster, just got to ride it, I mean, who knows where this is going, but I do think that, and reading the comments under some of these recent videos, I've seen other guys expressing similar things to this, which is that actually that there are huge benefits to being a free, single, itinerant bachelor, and maybe an increasing number of people don't really want to give that up, myself included. So I think it's, sometimes I get slightly schneidi comments directed at me saying, well, how come you're married? How come you don't have someone? It's like, well, do you really think I haven't had the chance? I mean, seriously? Do you really think the bar for getting married is that high? I mean, get off the internet and have a look around. I mean, some of the dudes, go to IKEA, look at the dudes pushing the shopping trolleys around. They're not all giga chads. I mean, the bar for getting married is not particularly high, really, because ultimately you need to be a provider. And if you've got a half decent job, you can be a provider. I mean, you're not going to be a multi-millionaire, throwing yacht parties, but you can be a provider. The bar for that is not high, and certainly for somebody like me who's high value, and I've been a high earner, and I've had an interesting life and stuff like that. I've certainly been in many situations where, yes, I mean, the woman absolutely wanted to take it on to that next stage, and really, just get past those people. Really, the resistance to that ultimately came from me, and the reasons for that resistance are, as I say, probably my background and my sort of philosophical and intellectual and emotional wranglings with the very nature and notion of monogamy itself, and on top of that, my lifestyle, and actually trying to weigh up the benefits of having a sort of, some music playing here, having the benefits of having a sort of solopreneur kind of like lifestyle, and whether those actually outweigh, in the end, for me, as an individual, the benefits of being in something committed and long-term, like a long-term relationship with cohabitation or a marriage. So that's where I am, okay? So hopefully that answers all the doubters' questions. As I say, regardless, I mean, if I got married tomorrow, then everybody would be commenting going, oh, well, what does he know about it? He's married, he's off the market. So whatever you do, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't as well. But anyway, there it is. Hopefully, if somebody found that useful, do please hit subscribe to this channel. It really helps. Do drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about this issue. Get on my free email list. The link is below. And grab my collection of 11 books about dating and the dating marketplace called Renegade Dating Blueprint. The link is also below. See you again very soon. Bye-bye.